All right. Well, the Florida Gators take on Kentucky on Saturday night in the Swamp. Let's preview the game in tonight's episode presented by BetUS. Also, stick around because Meldon Law is partnering with us to do a giveaway for the LSU game, and I want you guys to know about that. But let's jump right into it. I am here with Justin Rowland of Cats Illustrated. Justin, good to see you again. It's been a year. How are you tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I had a good time last year, and let's do it again.
All right. Well, Kentucky's been up and down this year. I know another team that's kind of been similar to that. Kentucky nearly beat Georgia. They did beat Ole Miss, but then they lost to a Vandy team that honestly I think is a lot better than maybe people thought, just a couple of weeks ago. So what is the mood over there in Lexington?
I think people are pretty disillusioned, because coming into the season, one of the talking points was Kentucky hadn't been able to get over the hump in big games. They hadn't shown up against the best opponents on their schedule. And so it seemed like the 12-team playoff was kind of an impossible climb. You're going to beat the teams you should beat, and you're going to lose to the teams you should lose to. Well, this year, it's been totally opposite. They almost beat Georgia. They go to Ole Miss. They win at Ole Miss. And so everybody's riding high. They felt like that canceled out the South Carolina loss. But in the big picture, this is a team that has been really struggling against South Carolina, Vanderbilt, recently Missouri, and a lot of the teams that Stoops had reversed their fortunes against for a long time. It seems like they've been backsliding against those bottom half of the SEC teams, and that's not the direction you want to be going in.
So are fans antsy? Are they apathetic? Are they angry? Like, where are Kentucky fans' heads at on what's going on this season?
I think they're pretty upset because they see a team that's very talented. I mean, they have a lot of NFL talent on that defense. They've got some really athletic players on that offense that they've heard about for 2 or 3 years, and they've been waiting for breakouts from. They've got a 5-star quarterback. They've seen Stoops teams win 10 games before, but there's been so many shoot yourself in the foot moments, so many operational failures, so many failures at situational football, like the middle 8 minutes of the game when you're finishing the half and you're coming out of life. Sounds familiar.
Listen, you could be describing the Florida Gators right now, so I am laughing, listening. Like, the middle 8 is something we talk about on this channel all the time. Situational football, just getting a good feel for the game, just absolutely shooting yourself in the foot. I can commiserate with you on that.
I mean, the bottom line is they were right about the defense. This is a team that held Georgia to 13 points. They held Ole Miss to 17 points at home. Defense is good enough to beat anybody. The defense is good enough to make it interesting against Texas. At Texas later on this year, it really is. But there is no margin for error because the offense has been so anemic. They've scored 4 touchdowns in 16 quarters of SEC play. And there's reason to think it could get better. But when your offense has been that bad, it looks like a team with no margin for error. They could beat Florida, but if the offense comes out, too many penalties, couple of turnovers, it's probably going to go the other way.
So I've been asking guests this a lot, and honestly, I asked it for you last year, and maybe your opinion has changed. But as an outsider, what is your perception of Coach Napier?
He talks real slow. I think he's a guy who is a process guy. He seems like he's not a flash in the pan. Success under Napier looks like you're going to have to be patient, and he's going to want to build a foundation. But when I think about Florida football under Billy Napier, I'm not saying this to be offensive, but there's nothing that really jumps out at you. There's not an identity. There's not that one thing that really gets your hopes up. So I would imagine, as an outsider and maybe thinking about what the Florida fan base feels like, they're looking for something to get excited about. Maybe the defensive improvement is something I haven't watched them as closely as you guys have, but just looking for that thing that you want to get excited about moving forward. I don't quite feel like he's found that yet.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Saturday's game. Graham Mertz went down last week against Tennessee. He was diagnosed with a torn ACL, so we obviously will not see him the rest of this season. What are your thoughts on playing DJ Lagway this week?
Yeah, it's a variable. It used to be dual threat quarterbacks were like kryptonite for Kentucky football, and Kentucky football fans were convinced there was a curse. But I just tell them they just weren't very good. So that's why you struggled against dual threat quarterbacks. They've been a lot better against dual threats in recent years, but there's less film to scout on him. Um, I feel like it's probably a good thing for Kentucky, but you never know when you're rolling a guy out there who hasn't played as much. There's not as much to scout. He's going to test you in different ways, but I think it's probably a more limited offensive attack. Kentucky is a defense that will give you the short stuff, and Mertz is obviously going to take the short stuff. It didn't work for him last year, but Kentucky is generally good at taking away explosives, and so if you're going into a game and you're saying we're going to hit explosives and that's how we're going to win, that's a tough formula against Kentucky. So, but I haven't watched Lagway as closely as you guys have.
Kentucky's defense this year has been good. Thoughts on how they'll play on the road? The Swamp is still a formidable place to play, even if the home team isn't, as electric as Gator fans would like. How do you think that they will do on the road at night in that stadium?
I think the defense will play fine. I mean, the defensive line has been strong all season. You got not only Deion Walker, who, if he comes out, should be a first-round pick, but Trayvon Ribka's played at a really high level this year. Octavius Oxendine. It's a very experienced, big, physical defensive line that takes away the run. They make opponents one-dimensional. They don't create as much havoc in the backfield as some other teams, but week in, week out, it's been a very consistent defense. I mean, they've been good all season. South Carolina scored 31 points, but the offense handing the ball away and making all kinds of miscues played a big role in that. I think if you're Florida, you hope that you score 21 points, and that's enough to beat Kentucky because of how bad the offense has been.
So last game, Kentucky ran for about 4 million yards in the game against the Gators. And, UF has done pretty well defensively on the ground the last 2 weeks versus UCF and Tennessee, two teams who had really prolific running offenses. How do you see that matchup going?
I mean, last year going in, I can say it now, but I mean, I had heard last year they were optimistic about running the ball against Florida because they had seen some vulnerability in Princely, in particular, on tape. And that was the game plan, was to run right at him. And obviously, it's different personnel. But I mean, that was the coming out party for Ray Davis. We didn't know, and we saw Ray Davis on Monday Night Football the other night. Nobody knew. He was kind of an efficiency workhorse at Vanderbilt. And he became a completely different player, and a guy who's known for explosive, big chunk plays. That Florida game had a lot to do with it. So, I mean, if I had to guess, I think their game plan is pretty simple. Kentucky has run the ball better than it's passed the ball. They have a formula for playing and beating Florida. Frankly, it's kind of just play them close and hope in the end they shoot themselves in the foot on drives in the fourth quarter and what it is. So that's kind of game Kentucky's going to play. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to control the ball, control the clock if they can, and just hope and wait for Florida to make mistakes.
What weapons should UF watch out for on the Kentucky side offensively?
Well, we've been talking about Barryon Brown for going on 3 years now, and they have invested a lot in him, and he's one of the most explosive straight line runners and return men in college football, but he's still rounding into form as a wide receiver in terms of route running, release, all that kind of stuff. So Dane Key has become the number one receiver. He's with the deep targets, with targets in general, Dane Key is the guy they're trying to get the ball to. They haven't had an identity on offense, and it seems like they're trying to make Dane the identity on offense. And he's been very sure-handed. He looks like a really mature player this year, so that'll be a tough matchup for Florida's secondary. The running backs haven't done a lot. I mean, Demi Sumo Kangbe, he's an all-around player. He catches the ball, he runs the ball, he blocks really well, but he doesn't make big runs. And Jamarian Wilcox, I know there's been the quote about Stoops saying he's got to remember to tie his shoe if he wants to stay in the game. But he gives them a little bit more juice, but they don't trust him to do that. So it has been a very limited offense, and the offensive line has been a problem. I know you asked for standouts, but the reason why they haven't been able to push the ball down the field and leverage the talent that they have at receiver is because, especially in obvious passing situations, they have not been able to protect. And I don't see that changing this weekend.
So what about UF worries you the most?
I think the fact that they've been better on defense the last 2 weeks is a big concern because Kentucky's offense has no margin for error. I mean, we haven't seen anything from Kentucky's offense this year that suggests that they're going to be capable of scoring more than 21, 24 points going on the road in an SEC game. I mean, Vanderbilt was 13, 20 against Ole Miss, 12 against Georgia, a 6 against South Carolina. So you kind of know half the SEC schedule in that the offense is probably not going to produce a lot. And with Florida's defense improving and doing some things, showing some life, playing with more energy, on the road, hostile environment, you can see the wheels coming off for the offense in a worst case scenario.
How much does this game mean for Kentucky's season?
A lot. I mean, there are some fans that are going to roll there. They're going to say whatever, it doesn't matter because they've lost to South Carolina and Vanderbilt. But realistically, I mean, Kentucky wins this game. If they beat Auburn, they could beat Louisville. Tennessee looks kind of vulnerable. There's still a lot of winnable games left on the schedule. It's not as tough as Florida's schedule in the big picture. So this could still be a team that gets to 7 wins in the regular season. But if they lose this game, then we're going to be talking about the possibility of Stoops missing out on a bowl game for the first time in about 8 or 9 seasons.
How much do you think this game means for Florida's season as an outsider?
A lot. I mean, it's a lot. There are only so many winnable games on that schedule for Florida. I mean, really winnable games. I guess taking Tennessee down to the wire on the road kind of shoots a hole in that. Maybe they can be competitive in more than I anticipated going into the season. They've shown some improvement, but yeah, I would have when Barry Odom got fired at Missouri, or when Will Muschamp got fired at Florida, or these coaches in the old SEC East that got fired during Stoops' tenure, you hear the fan bases talk, we can't beat Kentucky. We're not beating Kentucky. And that becomes kind of a litmus test, especially at Florida. If you're at Florida and you can't beat Kentucky, you're not going to last. That's just a fact. No offense to Kentucky, but you have to beat Kentucky almost every time to be a successful head coach at Florida. If you're not doing that, you're not even in the ballpark, swimming in the waters that people want you to be in.
So, do you have a pick in this one yet?
I think I'm going to pick Florida just because it's on the road. I think they've improved the past couple of weeks. They're trending in a better direction than Kentucky. I think we've seen when Napier was under fire, the worst of it, when people really had been turning on him. I think Florida responded to that better than Kentucky has responded to adversity or success this season. So I'm not sure what the leadership is like on Kentucky's team right now. Who are the leaders in the locker room? You want your best players to be your leaders, ideally. But I have a question about the leadership going into this SEC road game, and the inconsistency doesn't give you a lot of faith that they're gonna show up.
All right, Justin. Well, thank you for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find your work and where they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, catsillustrated.com is kentucky.rivals.com, and Rollin' Rivals on Twitter or X. So I appreciate that.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Good luck this weekend.
Y'all have a good one.
You too. All right, Gator fans, before we talk more about this game, I want to give BetUS some love. You can go to BetUS and bet on the game right now. BetUS has upped the game, and now you can get a 150% deposit bonus when you use the code YouTube150. That's up to $2,000. Your second and third deposits are still at that $125 deposit bonus, and Kentucky is a slight favorite right now. So if you like the Gators, go lay a little money on it. I appreciate BetUS for their support. Go check them out. All right, Gator fans, I want to talk to you a little bit about some players I'm going to have my eye on in Kentucky, some, little facts about the game, and then we're going to kind of break down what I need to see in order for a Gator victory. So Kentucky, Justin mentioned these players a lot, but Dane Key is kind of a key for Kentucky. Okay. He has been very, very good for them. He caught 8 passes for 83 yards and a touchdown against that loss against Vanderbilt. He has at least 7 catches in each of their last 3 games. And he is the very first pass catcher to accomplish that feat for Kentucky since 2021. So he is who they are going to be targeting. And then Jamarian Wilcox, redshirt freshman running back, he really hasn't had a ton of opportunities this fall. He hasn't had more than 9 carries in any game, but when the ball's in his hands, good things happen for the Wildcats more often than not. So I do expect them to try and feed him more than they have in previous games. He only had 3 rushing attempts in the loss to Vanderbilt, but he averaged 12 yards per carry, which is pretty impressive. So I expect that game plan is going to be geared towards him in a large part. And then Derek Jackson, he is a 5th-year senior linebacker. He had 7 tackles against Vanderbilt, which adding to a career that's already seen him pass the 200 tackle mark, which is really impressive. He also intercepted Commodores quarterback Diego Pava. It was his first interception of the season. Jackson's 5th career pick as a Wildcat. He has at least 1 interception in 4 of his 5 seasons in Lexington. You know he's going to have his eye on DJ Lagway. He's going to hope and try to get one there too. So those are 3 guys that I really am going to pay close attention to. And then on our side of the ball, all eyes got to be on DJ Lagway, right? Graham Mertz suffered that ACL injury against Tennessee. He won't be playing on Saturday or the rest of the season. So Lagway is going to make his 2nd career start. He's from Willis, Texas, and has appeared in all 6 outings for the Gators this fall and has a 65.3% completion rating out of all of his attempts and 765 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He's also carried the ball 24 times for 50 yards. I'm going to get into this a little bit more in my keys to the game, but I'm so interested to see 2 things with Lagway. And one is if they open the playbook, and 2, how they manage concerns about if he were to go down, then what, essentially. I also expect Tyreek Sapp to have another big game. I think he has lived up to his name as, off the edge here. He has been a terror. I think that he has been one of Florida's top defensive linemen the last couple of weeks. He's topping the team in sacks, 3.5. He is tied for first in sacks, like solo sacks at 3. And then Gubbs is the other person that he's tied with. He's a Florida native, 23 tackles total in 2024. He has just having a really good season for the Gators. That defensive line has appeared to turn the corner the last couple of weeks. We need to see that continue against Kentucky. If we know anything about a Stoops coach team, it's that it's going to be physical. Florida got manhandled last season when they played in Lexington. I need to know if we learned a lesson from that. I expect Sapp to step up once again. Let's talk a little bit about Kentucky, what they've done so far this season. You heard me mention that they beat Ole Miss, but then lost to Vanderbilt. They'll play Auburn the week after they play Florida. They have won 4 of their last 6 road games. Brock Vandagriff is completing 59.8% of his passes for 951 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So if you're keeping track at home, his completion percentage is lower than DJ Lagway's. Dane Key and Barian Brown have combined for 666 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. So those are going to be 2 guys that he looks to target a lot. Their ground game has been averaging about 153 yards per game. And they have been decently strong. They've kind of had the same issues as Florida where they get in the red zone and they don't walk away with points. But in terms of moving the ball, they have been able to move the ball. And defensively, just like Justin said, they're allowing 14.5 points and 250 yards a game. I mean, their defense has been stifling. So that is going to be the kind of deciding factor of this game. Can DJ Lagway and Florida's offense move the ball against this Kentucky defense? The combination of the fact that Florida's defense has taken a step in the right direction and Kentucky's offense is not very good, I'm not concerned about Kentucky scoring a ton of points. I am concerned with Florida being able to consistently put points on the board, especially because of the red zone issues last week. We beat UCF. We barely lost to Tennessee. We played Georgia in 2 weeks. The Gators need this one. We have won 6 of our last 10 home games. that is something that is a really important. Coach Napier needs to continue to improve the home record. Hopefully that will happen on Saturday. The Gators on the ground are averaging 141 yards per contest. And obviously Montreal Johnson had been leading the way for the Gators with 373 yards and 4 touchdowns. But we've got a stable of running backs. And I expect us to see Jaden Baugh. I expect us to see Jacoby Jackson. Florida is set at running back. Defensively, we are currently allowing 24.2 points per game and 381 yards. But I think we're going to continue to see those stats shift a little bit because Florida's defense has improved. Jordan Castell leads the Gators with 30 tackles. And like I said earlier, Sapp has 3.5 sacks. 3 of those are solo. Shamar James has an interception. That's another guy that I would really like to see have a big game against Kentucky. We need him to step up. Okay, so what does Florida have to do to win this game? And what does history tell us about this? Well, Kentucky has lost 4 of their last 5 October games as a favorite against non-ranked teams. Does that mean anything in this? Probably not, but I think it's an interesting fact. Florida has won 7 of our 8 last home games in October against unranked teams. Kentucky has failed to cover the spread in every single game the last 4 games in October that they have played. So another interesting thing. And Florida has covered the spread in 5 of their 6 last games in October. Okay, so the Kentucky Wildcats are coming off a bad loss to Vanderbilt. Does that have a carryover effect? And a carryover effect can work 2 different ways, right? It can be a galvanizing moment where this team kind of has a gut check and they decide that they're going to come out angry. Do we see an angry, fired up Kentucky team? Or is it demoralizing, right? And so where one loss slips into another, we're going to see. And, the Florida Gators, maybe quietly turning their season around a little bit. I don't know. They beat Mississippi State soundly. They beat UCF, even though that score, if you're just looking at the box score, you feel like that was a close one. If you sat through that entire game, you know that game was never in question at all. And Florida should have upset Tennessee on the road, Neyland Stadium at night. The defense looks better. Players are flying around. And this locker room appears to be bought in, right? Are those things going to be positives for Florida on Saturday? And, a whole new quarterback situation. We were doing that constant quarterback switch, which, I guess at this point maybe looks smart because DJ Lagway has gotten a lot of reps and that's going to be important for what's about to happen for him. But neither quarterback could really get into a good groove while it was happening. And so I'm interested to see Lagway when there is no getting out of sync, right? Getting out of rhythm, playing a series and sitting and coming back and sitting. And it's his team now, right? He will have all of the reps in practice, which I think is huge, all of the reps in the game, and he's going to have a chance to get into a rhythm. Kentucky's only beaten Florida 5 times since 1980. 5 times. Napier has to wear, 2 of those so far, but statistically, it should play well in Florida's favor. So what do I need to see? And what do I think is going to be keys to Florida winning, right? I think one of the most important is, can the defense keep up this improvement? They have looked better the last couple of weeks. I think what we know about UCF now is that they're not a good team. So did our defense look good against them because they improved? Or does our defense look good against them because UCF is not good? I don't know. But then we go to Tennessee, who is a top 10 team. They're playing on the road at night in one of the toughest places in America to play. And they showed up. They were flying around. They were consistently tough. They were getting into the backfield. So are we supposed to believe that 2 teams in a row aren't as good as we thought? Or did this team maybe improve? I think we're seeing defensive progress, and I'm going to need to see that continue. Kentucky's not a good offense. This should be a great game for this defense to continue this tune-up before the meatiest part of the schedule. The next thing that I think is going to be a key to this is, does DJ Lagway make freshman mistakes? I've talked on this channel all along about how Graham Mertz had a higher floor than DJ Lagway, and DJ Lagway has a much higher ceiling than Graham Mertz does. You are much more likely to get an ESPN top 10 highlight out of DJ Lagway, but you are also probably more likely to get an interception out of DJ Lagway. So can he limit those freshman mistakes? And I do think it's important to say this is not a knock on DJ Lagway. I think this is a guy that could be sitting in New York one day before his college career is done, at a Heisman Trophy ceremony. I think he's that talented. This is a day one draft pick, but you're also talking about an 18-year-old kid who's getting baptized by fire in the SEC. And it is not going to be surprising if he makes some freshman mistakes. The other thing is going to be whether or not we open the playbook for him. His plays have been limited. He was splitting reps with Mertz, not only in the game, but in practice, he was taking mostly second team reps. So did we open the playbook for him? Did we obviously ran him with the ones this whole week, but are we going to allow him more? And, along with all of that, how conservative do you play with Lagway? Because if he goes down, you are not confident in anybody that sits behind him. I think Lagway is probably at his best with the reins off. And I'm concerned whether or not that's something that will be allowed to happen on Saturday. And I'd like to be pleasantly surprised. My next key to the game is, can we count? If I really thought maybe there was a chance we were going to make it through this season where I never had to sit here and lament about the fact that Florida can't count to 11. But here we are, and we lost another game in part because of a mistake that should have been taken care of 2.5 years ago. So can we get the right number of people on the field? And then I think the last thing is the fire still there? This is a team that is playing united, that is playing with passion and fire and commitment. And that's interesting because they're also in a situation where they don't know if their head coach is going to continue to be their head coach from one week to the next, from one season to the next. It would be very easy for them to get checked out. It would be very easy for them to, declare that they're ready to hit the transfer portal. And none of those things have happened. And I think that is really a credit to Coach Napier. These guys are playing as a team, and I think if they can continue that fire, then there's a chance that they can pick up maybe some games that they shouldn't. Before we get to a prediction, I do want to give some love to Meldon Law. We love to shout them out for all the things they do, not only for my channel, but for Gator Athletics. And now they're giving back to one of you guys. Right now, you can click the link in our description to enter to win tickets to the UF LSU game at the end of the year. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy anything. Just register there and you are set. I appreciate Meldon Law for their support and this giveaway we're partnering on. I am so excited. I hope one of you guys wins this ticket and then we can tailgate together for the LSU game. It will be great. Okay, so it is prediction time, all right? And I do think Florida beats Kentucky at home. I think that they can finally break this little curse that's been going on the last few years. I think that this team is still juiced. I think this defense is improving. That doesn't mean that this team is good. That doesn't mean that this team's going to run the table the rest of the way out, but I am predicting 28-21, Florida beats Kentucky. And, I think it'll give everybody a little show on homecoming. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and thank you to BetUS and Meldon Law for all of your support. We've got more content coming your way later this week, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and go Gators.